Hey everyone, this is Warren Thomas. Thank you guys for joining. Today we're going to talk about a program I was listening to yesterday, and I thought it was a very interesting topic. It's dealing with the magazine called Black Enterprise. They have a conference coming up. I wish I could have made it, but I already had scheduled plans. But I'm going to talk tonight about something the gentleman who was representing Black Enterprise. His name is Alfred Edmond. I think he's the editor or publisher of the Black Enterprise magazine. Now, for those of you of my subscribers and those of you who are going to be listening to us at a future date, um, this is for you also. It's a very interesting topic. It's not exclusive to my Black audience, but I think everyone can benefit from this information. So, Mr. Edmond was being interviewed on a program out of New York called The Breakfast Club, and he was talking about the conference this weekend, or maybe I think it might have started today, in regards to the Black Enterprise annual uh, Entrepreneurs Conference. I forget the exact title. Needless to say, the reason I wanted to talk about this is something that Mr. Edmonds said in relationship to raising capital. And take a listen to this.
Is it easier to get money now? Is our bank starting to lend us more money?
It's not so much about banks lending more money because it's the same thing. They want to lend to established businesses. If you're just starting it up, they're not just going to lend you money because they're not going to risk that money. But there are other way more diverse, whether it's crowdfunding, whether it's angel investing, whether it's elevator pitch competitions like ours. There's many around the country. Some of them, the bigger ones, I judge Tap the Future for Miller Lite, and their top prize can be anywhere from $150,000 to $200,000. But then the bigger the money, the more people you got to compete with. So it's not like they're like handing it out. You got to compete with some pretty tough businesses. But there are a wide variety of sources of financing what we call the small business ecosystem than just I got to get a bank to give me a loan. And that's where most people need to go.
So, as you can hear what Mr. Edmonds said in regards to raising capital, and as I listened, it kind of brought me back to thoughts I had maybe 20, 25 years ago in regards to how difficult it is to raise capital. And I would agree in the context that 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, for Black people, it was a difficult road in relationship to raising capital, whether it be to start a business or to even buy real estate. For example, the Federal Housing Authority, FHA, had a program wherein that they did not want to guarantee loans for Blacks to get houses. The program was referred to as redlining, wherein that red lines were drawn around communities across the country, which were predominantly Black, and you could not obtain financing for a home. And as he spoke, it just struck me. And I thought that I should do this presentation because the marketplace has changed, and I'm going to talk about that. But as an example, when I was younger, when my parents were looking for funding to buy real estate, it was very difficult. This is in the 80s, parts of the 90s. And they were able to get funding for their primary residence. But when it came to buying investment property, that's where the difficulty came in. So unless you had saved money, you had family members, you pooled your resources together to buy a property, and or you had a very rich aunt or uncle who can contribute to the funding, getting money from banks for blacks in the 70s, 60s, 40s, certain parts of the 80s was difficult. And as he spoke, that's what it reminded me of. That's what his, not his tone, but, the sentiment reminded me of the difficulty in getting money, access to capital. And as we move forward from the 70s and 80s into the 90s, I think back in retrospect, for me, when was the first time I actually started seeing a change in the marketplace as it relates to accessing capital. I remember a good friend of mine mentioning it was about 2000. This is right at the height of the tech bubble and right before the market crashed. Good friend of mine, he owned a construction company. He told me a young man had approached him about getting capital from HSBC. And what he was able to do, this young man helped my friend obtain a $100,000 unsecured line of credit with HSBC. And I don't remember if he had to produce any financials, but I know one of the primary criteria was his credit. He had to have a 700 credit score, and my friend just happened to have a 700 plus credit score at the time. And he told me that literally it took him about 2.5 weeks to get that $100,000. And I was flabbergasted. I at the time, as a young man, thought it was literally almost amazing that he was able to get the loan with such ease. Because usually you hear about the difficulty in getting funding. You got to produce your tax returns. You got to have a business that's 2 years old. You got to have a certain amount of revenue. You got to have, most importantly, collateral. And if you have none of those things, the banks will not lend you any money unless you're going for a mortgage. So I think that was like the first time I really started hearing about the level of flexibility in this particular space, business financing, and in fact, general funding for mortgages, average individuals getting mortgages and so forth. Move forward into about 2003, 2004, myself and my family, we moved down to Atlanta with the children. And I met a few individuals who also were doing business funding at the time. And again, I started seeing more flexibility. At the time, I was actually focused on buying a business, not necessarily on real estate. I did real estate, myself and my wife, between the late 90s and the early 2000s. But when we moved to Atlanta, we were more looking at buying a business. So I wasn't focused that much on the real estate. But during that period of time, from 2002 on to like 2006, we had a period wherein that almost anyone could get a loan. Literally, if you had a Pulse, a 650 or better credit score, you could obtain what is called a stated loan, not only for real estate, because a lot of people think it was only real estate. You would think that you guys probably heard of the term subprime mortgages. Well, you also had loans, bank loans, credit cards that were also stated unsecured. And literally, you can state your income and obtain funding. So that was a stark difference from what I experienced watching my parents in the 70s and 80s to what I was experiencing my family during the early 2000s. And it was about 2006, we were looking to purchase a property. And I noticed there were a lot of people getting what we call at the time mini mansions. Hell, I wanted one. I wanted a 7,000 square foot house, 6 bedrooms, 5 baths, on 5 acres. And myself and my wife, we started looking at different properties, and I was trying to figure out how some of these people were able to get the properties, because I knew some people just through casual acquaintances that were able to get these mini mansions, and I know they didn't have the income to qualify. And because at the time we were more focused on acquiring a business, I didn't know what the process was until one day we were at a particular community and we were talking to the real estate agent, and she described what they were doing. Well, it turns out her and her brother was the architect developer of the community. They're all homes 4,000 square feet to 10,000 square feet. And what they were doing basically was that if you had a 680, 700 score, credit score, they were doing a stated income program through a bank. Stated income meaning all you're doing is writing down what your income is, 80, 90,000, 100,000, 150,000, whatever it was. Whatever you need to put on that form to qualify for the loan, that's what you put on there. The focus was the credit. And for those of you who don't know, when you're a builder, the way builders make their money, one of the ways to make their money is that, let's say a property upon completion of being built, it's worth $1 million. Well, to build that property, it's only going to cost the builder anywhere between 50 to 66, basically 2/3 of the value of the property to build it. 50% to 2/3, right? So you have an additional third that's going to be equity. Now the builder can keep the equity upon the sale of the property, or he could share it with the buyer. And what this brother and sister team were doing, they were sharing the equity with the buyers. So at closing, once they got you qualified with their lending source, you got cash back at closing. And it could be a few $1,000s to many cases, they were doing $100,000 cashbacks at closing. And what they were recommending to the individuals who purchased, the buyers, was that you take the money, escrow it, and for the first year, or however long it carry you, you use that to pay your mortgage. And for many people, that was the way to do it. And I didn't realize what they were doing, because you either had to kind of stumble onto one of these deals or know somebody who knew somebody to kind of give you the heads up on how everything was working. But it seemed like a lot of people were doing the same kind of transaction, especially for newer houses. And at that time, we were kind of scaling down. We were just at the point where we were going to close on a larger deal. It did not go through, but needless to say, that time we started looking for housing to move, kind of scale up, not scale down. But if you guys remember, that was around the time the clouds start forming in the financial markets, 2000, ending 2006, 2007. And we started seeing gyrations in the market. And there were signals running through the market, but for most people, if you were not astute to how the markets work, you weren't paying attention. And even some of the guys who were veterans in the financial markets got caught off guard. I was one of those guys. I was looking at this blissful path ahead and not paying attention to what was going on in the marketplace. Now, don't get me wrong. I have looked at different market crashes over the years, everything from the Great Depression to Tulip Depression in the, I think it was like the 1800s in Holland, and the crash of 29, the run on the banks in 21. So I had a little knowledge and knew what some of the signs were. And one of those major signs for you guys who are listening, your edification, when everybody can access money, that's the time you got to be getting out of the markets. When anybody and everybody can access money, that's the time you need to get out of the markets. I think Warren Buffett said, when there's blood in the streets, that's when you buy. When everybody is enjoying and it's a party time, that's when you sell. It's the same kind of mindset that when there is opportunities abound in the economy and everybody can access capital regardless of their situation, that's the time you got to be careful. And I knew that to an extent, but like a lot of other people, I wasn't paying attention. And 2007 came, and I started seeing some issues with a couple of my investments. And then 2008, well, that was October. That was the day of reckoning. That's when everything went south. And I'll tell you guys about a couple of deals that I was working on at the time that suffered. But when we knew we had a problem is when one of our deals, we were working with I think it was either Wachovia or Wells Fargo at the time. And we had a very large deal to buy a fish processing plant. And a young lady who was helping us organize the funding called me and said, Mr. Thomas, the bank basically pulled the plug on the deal. So I asked her why. Well, what's the issue? She said, no, you don't understand, Mr. Thomas. They're not lending anyone money. And I called up a few friends and found out that there were people at closing tables they were expecting wires to close on transactions and nothing came through. All the banks, Chase, Bear Stearns, Wachovia, Wells Fargo, Merrill Lynch, Citibank, everyone stopped lending money. And that's when we had the crash of 2008. But back to what I was talking about. From that 2002, 2005, 6, 7 period, anyone could have access to capital. If you were breathing, you had a pulse, and you had a decent credit score, you can get money. So the landscape had changed. For blacks, it was a lot more easier to access money. Now, did everyone take advantage? No. Not everyone has access to information. And that's why the internet becomes so important, because if you're seeking knowledge, if you really want to change your life, the information is out there. There's a scripture that says, seek and you shall find, knock on the door shall be open, ask and it shall be given. If you want to change your life today, all the information and the resources are out there for you to do so. But it's up to you. Because you notice in that scripture that I quoted, you have to take the first step before the universe takes a step towards you. So let's get past the crisis of 2008. 2009, 2010, we started having problems with a lot of our properties. A lot of folks weren't paying their rent, and that's when the whole mortgage crisis hit and foreclosures all over the place, and we lost a lot of property. And we just spent a couple years building up the portfolio, and all that went south. And for a period of time, it was extremely difficult to get money because the banks weren't lending any money. But then, let's say after 2011, 2012, I started seeing a little glimmer, a little light kind of shining through. Folks, in the system we live, money is like air. If you want to survive in this system, either you're going to have to go earn it, or you're going to have to beg for it. If you don't have it, in order for you to survive, somebody will either have to spend it on your behalf or give it to you. So don't complain about money and how the system works. It's the system we live in. Those of you who have the inclination to want to change it, well, that's an opportunity. And we can also talk about that on another day, maybe even one of the lives that I do. If you're interested in ideas, we can kick around about restructuring the system. But needless to say, there was a light shining through. And I got to tell you guys, when the market crashed, I had to file bankruptcy several times to try to save some of the properties. So my credit was wrecked. And I had those bankruptcies on my credit report for several years. And I was told that you cannot get those bankruptcies off of your report for at least a decade, 10 years. And I actually believed that. And I'll tell you guys a little later about how that belief I had to strike down. So based on what Mr. Edmonds said, yes, if you go the traditional route of trying to raise money, the front door of the bank, they're going to tell you we need collateral. They're going to say we need 2 years financial statements. Then we want to see what your income is. Hopefully your business has been around for 2 years. And they're going to want anything and everything they can to secure that note. It's only recently this SBA has a program that you can borrow up to $350,000 and not have to show any collateral. All you have to do is have decent credit and financial statements, not financial statements, tax returns, last 2 years tax returns. If you have a business, you can get up to $350,000. So the difficulty is not as bad as it was many years ago. And as you guys heard Mr. Edmonds speak, he mentioned the fact in regards to, I think, private investors, angel investors, and other sources for raising capital. And there was a kind of sense of there's sentiments like it's difficult. And you got to have these pieces in place in order to get the money. And I'm telling you, no, it's not that difficult. Matter of fact, if you guys are looking for 50,000, 100,000, 250,000, it's not that difficult, but you have to be structured properly. You have to have the right things in place. You have to be organized in relationship to your credit profile, whether it's personal or business, and you can get the money. There are money getting strategies that you can employ to fund your business. Whether it's a startup, literally you can start a business tomorrow and get $150,000 in 30 days. Or if you have an existing business, the money's there. If you have a personal credit score of at least 680 or better, you can literally get money in a matter of 2 to 3 weeks. $50,000, $100,000, $150,000. And there's no issue about discrimination. It's a matter of how you structure your paperwork. And once your paperwork is structured properly, you can get the money. So I'd have loved to talk to Mr. Edmonds about that. And those of you who have listened to my other videos, you know that you can also access capital even if your credit is crap. Let's say you got a 580 score, a 540 score. You can still get $150,000. Now, it will take you a little longer. And you've got to be a little more disciplined, a little bit more focused, and patient. And if you build business credit without utilizing your social or personal guarantee and just build it under your business, an LLC or corporation, you can have that same kind of access to funding that the person with excellent credit has. And what I suggest is that while you're building the business credit and accessing capital via your business, you also restore your credit. With business credit, it's a 3-tier system. You work with vendor credit. You have to have a certain amount of vendor credit. The second tier is store credit. You have to have a certain amount of store credit. And then you can access cash credit, where it's actual lines of credit, where it's actual credit cards, cash cards, Visa, MasterCard, American Express. Even if your credit is crap. So the landscape has changed. The marketplace has changed. The traditional methods of going and getting capital, you don't have to go through that anymore, necessarily. And you can raise as much money as the person who went through the front door of the bank. I call it going through the side door. But the person who's going through the front door, they're going to have to produce all those documents. You don't have to. Good credit score, great or excellent credit score, and the knowledge that I and my team possess to help you organize your paperwork to comply with what the institutions are looking for. And you can get unsecured funding. Now, unlike my friend who got a lump sum $100,000 in 2000, nowadays you may have to aggregate several institutions, 10,000 here, 20,000 there, 5,000 there. But at the end of the day, you may end up with the same $100,000 to start or fund an existing business. But again, you have to have someone who knows how to put together the paperwork and help you to structure your credit properly, to teach you what the right credit mix is, how many revolving lines of credit, how many term loans, should you have a real estate on there, a property on there, all the things you need to know what someone needs to see on your report. And those of you who are interested and your credit is not good, please give us a call, 404-736-6067, extension 110, or just press 0 for operator. And we have a program, our basic program, Road to Financial Freedom and Success. It's a basic program. It's $300, but we will restore your credit for free. Folks, I'm not making a ton of money off of that. The way I make money is when you get serious funding, $50,000, $100,000, $250,000, $500,000. That's when I make real money. But those of you, in order to get to that level, some of you I have to help to fix your credit. And I'll do it for free once you become a member of our group. You have to participate in some of our workshops because you have to learn. Learn how to access credit. Learn what the best type of corporation to have. When should you structure your business? When should you start raising money? These are all the things that we're going to teach you. How to develop multiple streams of income. These are all workshops we'll teach you as a basic member. If you're interested, click on our website, Quick Cash for Businesses. Businesses is plural. QuickCashForBusinesses.com. Go to Get Started, and you'll see our basic membership program. Click on that, cover the cost, and join the club. Those of you who are a little bit more advanced, your credit is better, 680 or better, and you're ready to get that money in your pocket to do what you need to do and build your business and start building wealth, join our business credit and financing suites. Again, quickcashforbusinesses.com. Get started. Click and join. It's very simple. So, for Mr. Edmonds, I hope that next year I can participate in the conference, and I'd love to share what I do and how I can help not only the entrepreneurs that read their magazine, but other entrepreneurs who will be listening to this video. If you need help, we're here to help you. And those of you who are not Black, some of you have also probably experienced a difficulty in accessing funding, whether due to credit issues, collateral issues, or otherwise. We're here to help everyone who is seeking capital to start or fund an existing business. But I hope this story I shared with you guys can help. And the fact that hopefully Mr. Edmond and his group will also learn that the marketplace has changed. And yes, you can go to your traditional sources, the regular commercial banks and the angel investors and the private equity guys and the venture capitalists, and you can provide all the documentation and you can do your elevator pitch, or you can try to get on Shark Tank. Matter of fact, I have a video coming up after this one called Don't Get Eaten by the Sharks, Avoid the Tank. Don't get eaten by the sharks, avoid the tank. And I'll talk about ways to raise capital, and you don't have to give up all your business, control of your business. Matter of fact, you can keep 100% control of your business and get the capital you need. I've seen on Shark Tank folks giving away $50,000, $60,000, and they're giving away their entire companies, and they can raise $100,000 and keep 100% of their companies. There's only two reasons I would ever go on Shark Tank. And if you want to know those reasons, listen to that next video. I'll explain those two reasons. There's only two reasons I will ever go on Shark Tank, or I'd recommend anyone to go on Shark Tank. And again, if you want to know those two reasons, listen to that video. But again, anyone listening to this video, share it with Mr. Alfred Edmond. And anyone that you know that may be interested in either starting a business or has an existing business and needs capital. And let myself and my team help you to get the funding that you're looking for. And you'll be surprised how painless it can be. On that note, my friends, I want you guys to like this video, share it with others. Please subscribe and give us a thumbs up. And the more likes we get, the higher we get in the ranking. We're literally about 218 subscribers. Folks, I want to get to 1,000 subscribers. Help me get to 1,000 subscribers in the next week. If you know of someone that can benefit from this information, share it with them. Recommend your friends, family members, colleagues to subscribe. I give a lot of very good information. It's not all about business. But I want to encourage you guys to look at the opportunities. If you're looking to create a side hustle for yourself, you have an existing business. If you have children, I started looking at becoming an entrepreneur when I was about 9 years old. My aunt used to subscribe to Entrepreneur Magazine, and I used to literally take her magazines and read them from cover to cover. She subscribed to Black Enterprise. That's when I first became familiar with Black Enterprise as a child. My aunt was an entrepreneur, and I'd read the magazines. I encourage you, if you have children, teach your children not only about getting a job, but also creating jobs for themselves. And the best example for that is if you, as a parent, create alternative sources of income. Develop multiple streams of income for yourself and your family. And let your children participate in that process. And you'll be surprised when a child is taught that, hey, you don't have to depend on anyone for a job, just create one for yourself. They will never be unemployed. Even if they want a job, they'll always have something to do on the side that generates income for themselves. And they can support themselves and their families. So again, please share our videos, like the videos. Help me build this subscription. I want to get to 1,000 within the next 60 days or less. So I'm charging each of you that's listening, help me to get to where I would need to get to. And give us a thumbs up. More shares, more likes, more people get to see what we're doing, more people hear about what we're doing. If you have any questions, put it in the comments or give us a call at 404-736-6067. And if not myself, one of my team members will answer your questions. And on that note, I look forward to meeting you guys someday, but I definitely look forward to meeting you on the road to financial freedom and success. Have a wonderful, wonderful time.